In the spring of 2003, Lena Beaupre, a woman of 29 with soil permanently worked into the lines of her knuckles, was handed a letter she was not supposed to understand. It arrived in a cream-colored envelope with a corporate logo she didn't recognize, a stylized wave above the words Meridian Hospitality Group, and it was addressed to the current land occupant of 4 River Flats Road, outside of Comox, British Columbia, not to Lena Beaupre, not to Beaupre Flower Farm, which had operated on that land for 31 years, to the current land occupant. That was the first insult. There would be others. Let me tell you about the meeting that followed because it deserves to be told properly. It happened in a rented boardroom on the 2nd floor of a Holiday Inn in Courtenay, the closest city of any size. The room smelled of carpet cleaner and recycled air. Lena drove herself there in her farm truck, still wearing her work boots because she hadn't seen a reason to change them. She was 20 minutes early. The Meridian people were already there, which told her something. There were 4 of them, 3 men and a woman, all from Vancouver, all in the particular kind of clothing that signals money without announcing it. Their lead was a man named Mr. Caldwell, first name never offered, never asked, who had the manner of someone accustomed to being the most important person in any room he entered. He shook Lena's hand with the specific briskness of a man who has already decided the outcome of a conversation before it begins. They had a presentation, printed on heavy stock bound in a folder with the Meridian logo. They slid it across the table to her. The plan, Mr. Caldwell explained, was for a destination wellness resort, 42 private cabins, a central lodge, a spa facility, a culinary program sourcing regionally, and crucially, this was where he paused for emphasis, as though delivering good news, a private pier and boardwalk system that would extend along the river estuary, the estuary that ran along the eastern boundary of her property, the estuary that her family had farmed beside for 3 decades, the river that fed her irrigation, the shoreline that she walked every single morning before anyone else was awake. The provincial government had approved the development. The municipality had been consulted. Everything was, in Mr. Caldwell's word, proceeding. "We'd like to discuss an acquisition of the eastern parcel," he said. "Approximately 11 hectares. We're prepared to offer a very fair market rate." Lena looked at the folder. She did not open it. She looked out the window instead, at the parking lot below, at the gray sky over the island mountains. She thought about the 11 hectares in question. She thought about the peony field her mother had planted in 1988, row by row, on her hands and knees, over an entire summer. She thought about the irrigation lines she and her father had trenched themselves. The year she turned 16, the summer her shoulders got strong. She thought about the way the light came off the river at 7 in the morning in June, that particular silver gold color that she had never seen anywhere else in 39 years of living on this planet. "The farm isn't for sale," she said. Her voice was level, quiet, the kind of quiet that takes practice. Mr. Caldwell smiled. It was a patient smile, the smile of a man who has heard this before and knows how the story ends. "Messieurs Beaupre," he said, "we understand there's a sentimental dimension here. We genuinely do. But I want to make sure you understand what's coming regardless. The development will proceed. It will bring significant infrastructure changes to this corridor. The road access, the utility easements, the increased traffic during construction. These things will affect your operation, whether you participate or not. We're offering you the opportunity to come out of this in a strong financial position. You're offering me the opportunity to sell my mother's peony field to a resort company," Lena said. A pause. "We're offering you significant compensation for." "I heard what you said." She stood up, picked up the folder, and handed it back across the table. She had not opened it. She would not open it. Thank you for the meeting." She drove home with the windows down, even though it was only April and still cold along the water. She needed the air. They thought she didn't understand business. They were right in a way. She didn't understand their business, she understood hers. And those were not the same thing. Now let me tell you about what Lena Beaupré's farm actually was, because it matters enormously to understand what came next. Beaupré Flower Farm had been started by her parents, Raymond and Clotilde, in 1972. Raymond had been a high school art teacher in Quebec City. Clotilde had grown up on a market garden outside of Lévis. They had driven west in a borrowed pickup with $300 and a seed catalog, found the Comox Valley, and simply stopped. The land spoke to them in a way that Raymond would later describe, with characteristic imprecision, as the loudest silence I ever heard. They had grown everything: dahlias, peonies, sweet peas, ranunculus, zinnias, foxglove, lisianthus, not for supermarkets. Raymond had refused this from the beginning, on aesthetic grounds that Clotilde thought were impractical, and later came to understand were correct. They sold at farmers' markets, to local florists, to the small restaurants that cared about where things came from. They built a U-pick field in 1989 that became, gradually, a beloved institution in the valley. People drove from Campbell River and Nanaimo on summer weekends. They came back year after year. They brought their children, then their children's children. Raymond had died in 1997, suddenly, from a heart attack, in the dahlia field, which Clotilde said was the most Raymond thing he could possibly have done. Clotilde had returned to Quebec the following year to be near her sisters, leaving Lena, 24 at the time, just finished an agriculture diploma at North Island College, to run the farm alone, which she had done for 6 years, which is to say, she had dug every bulb in the fall and replanted every one in the spring. She had managed the irrigation through 2 summer droughts and 1 early frost. She had built the farm stand at the end of the road with her neighbor's help, painted it the particular shade of dark red that her mother had chosen from a paint chip in 1974. She had kept the U-pick going, expanded the dahlia varieties, started a small wholesale account with 2 restaurants in Courtenay. She had done all of this alone, on a budget that left almost nothing for error, because she believed, without being entirely certain she was right, that the farm was worth keeping. Her father had told her something the winter before he died. They had been walking the peony field in November, the beds all mulched and resting, the air already sharp with the cold that comes off the Beaufort Range. "People talk about real estate like it's an investment," Raymond had said, his breath fogging. "They talk about return and yield and market value. You know what a peony field's market value is, Lena?" She had said she didn't know. "Nothing," he said. "Nothing that you can put in a spreadsheet. A peony field's market value is what it does to people when they stand in it. That's not a number. That's just the truth." He had bent down and pressed his hand flat against the mulched earth, that gesture she had seen 1,000 times, his palm against the ground like a greeting. "This land remembers who cared for it. Don't let anyone tell you the memory is worth less than the money." She thought about that a great deal. Over the years that followed, she thought about it especially in the summer of 2003, when the construction started. It was, as Mr. Caldwell had promised, significant. The access road to the resort site ran along the north edge of the valley, past the turnoff to her farm. Beginning in July, that road carried excavators, concrete trucks, steel delivery flatbeds, and fuel tankers from before 7 in the morning until after 6 in the evening, 6 days a week. The dust was extraordinary, a fine gray silt that settled over everything, the flower beds, the farm stand, the U-pick field, and had to be washed off daily or the blooms came up looking moth-eaten. The noise of the heavy equipment was constant, a low mechanical percussion that you stopped hearing consciously after 2 weeks, but that pressed against you regardless, like a hand on the back of your neck. The river access for irrigation became complicated. The environmental review had flagged a setback requirement that affected one of her pump intakes. She had to hire someone to reroute it, an expense she had not planned for and could not easily absorb. The valley regulars whispered, as people in small valleys always do. "Poor Lena," said the woman at the post office, not unkindly. "Should have taken the money when they offered." "They'll squeeze her out anyway," said a man who farmed hay fields on the other side of the highway. "They always do." Her neighbor Gord, who had helped her build the farm stand and who was constitutionally opposed to offering opinions he hadn't been asked for, said nothing. He just showed up on a Saturday morning in August with his pressure washer and spent 4 hours cleaning the dust off her stand and her fencing without being asked. That was its own kind of communication. There was a moment, I want to be honest about this, because Lena herself has been honest about it in the years since. A moment in September of 2003 when she came very close to calling Mr. Caldwell. It had been a hard week. A late heat event had stressed the fall dahlias badly, and she'd lost nearly a third of her cutting harvest at exactly the moment she needed it, most for the fall markets. She'd also discovered that a section of irrigation line had been damaged, probably by vibration from the road construction. And the repair was going to cost more than she had in her maintenance budget. She was tired in the specific way that farming makes you tired. Not just in the body, but in the will, in the part of you that keeps deciding to continue. She sat at the kitchen table that evening with the number for Meridian's regional office written on a piece of paper in front of her. She had found it herself. She hadn't called, not yet. She sat there for a long time. On the windowsill above the sink, there was a photograph her mother had sent from Levis the previous Christmas. It showed the peony field in full bloom, June, midday light, every row open at once. That specific extravagance of pink and cream and deep red that happened for about 10 days each year and then was gone. Clothilde had taken it from the old wooden chair she used to drag out there on bloom days, just to sit in the middle of it. The photograph was crooked in its frame. Lena had never straightened it. She picked up the piece of paper with the number on it. She held it. Then she folded it in half and put it in the kitchen drawer under the takeout menus and the spare batteries and the seed catalogs from 3 years ago. She closed the drawer. She made tea. She sat back down. Outside, the construction lights on the hill glowed orange in the dark. She did not call Mr. Caldwell. Have you ever decided to stay somewhere when every practical voice in your head was suggesting you leave? That is a different kind of decision than the ones people usually celebrate. It doesn't feel like courage in the moment. It just feels like making tea. The Meridian Valley Lodge opened in the late spring of 2005. It was, by every objective measure, beautiful. 42 cabins of reclaimed Douglas fir and glass, arranged along a designed boardwalk that followed the curve of the estuary. The central lodge had a restaurant, a wine bar, a spa, and what the brochure called a curated, immersive experience of the Pacific wilderness. The rooms started at $470 a night. The restaurant, called Estuary, sourced its proteins regionally and its vegetables from a distributor in Victoria who sourced them from farms in the Fraser Valley. The brochures featured a lot of photographs of the river, of the mountains, of the morning mist over the estuary, and from the lodge's eastern-facing deck, from the windows of the 42 cabins on that side, from the boardwalk along the shore. You could see Beaupre Flower Farm laid out in the valley below. In spring, you could see the ranunculus coming up in long, precise rows of yellow and orange and pink. In summer, You could see the dahlias, the 6-foot towers of them, in every color a dahlia comes in, which turns out to be nearly every color that exists. In late summer, you could see the U-Pick visitors moving through the rows with their buckets, the slow, deliberate pleasure of people choosing flowers. It was, several early guests noted in their reviews, unexpectedly lovely. The first contact happened in June of 2005, about 3 weeks after the lodge opened. Lena was at the farm stand, making up a bucket of sweet peas for a regular customer, when a couple walked up from the road. They were wearing the specific kind of outdoor clothing that functions as a uniform at high-end retreats. Technical fabrics, neutral colors, good boots that had never seen actual trail. They had the slightly dazed look that good vacations produce, that temporary suspension of the ordinary self. "Sorry to bother you," the woman said. She had a Montreal accent, French-Canadian English, which Lena always noticed because of her mother. "We're staying at the lodge. We walked down the road and saw your sign." She gestured at the farm stand, the hand-painted board that read Bay Up Ray Farm, flowers and U-Pick, in the same dark red as the stand itself. We've been watching your field from our cabin every morning. It's extraordinary." "What are those tall purple ones?" the man asked. Lena told him. They were Bishop of Llandaff dahlias, an heirloom variety, almost absurdly dramatic. She told him about the variety, about where her father had first found the bulbs, about how long they took to establish. The man had grown up on a hobby farm in the eastern townships and had strong feelings about dahlias, it turned out. They talked for 40 minutes. As they left, the woman stopped. "Can we come back tomorrow? Can anyone come to the U-Pick?" "Every day," Lena said, 9 to 5. They came back. They brought 3 other couples from the lodge with them. And then those couples mentioned it to other guests. And then those guests mentioned it to the front desk staff, who were getting more questions than they knew how to answer. "Where is that flower farm? Can the lodge arrange a visit? Is there a tour? Do they sell arrangements?" Lena was not a businesswoman in any formal sense. She had a diploma in agriculture, not commerce. But she understood what people needed when they stood in a flower field because she had watched people stand in that field her entire life. She understood that the need was specific and not easily manufactured. It was the need to be somewhere that had taken a long time to become itself. It was the need for a thing that couldn't be expedited. She did what her father would have called the obvious thing, which was to simply offer what she already had. She put a sign at the farm stand, hand-lettered. In the same paint it said, "Farm walk Saturdays and Sundays, 10 a.m., $12. Bring a bucket." The first Saturday, 9 people showed up. They were all lodge guests. They wore their resort clothes and walked a little carefully around the wet morning soil, and they listened to Lena explain the difference between a cactus dahlia and a dinner plate dahlia. Why you cut flowers in the morning and not the afternoon. What it sounds like when the irrigation system is working correctly and what it sounds like when something's wrong. They held dahlia tubers in their hands and felt the weight of them. They cut their own stems and carried them back to their cabins. They left reviews on the lodge's booking platform, not for the lodge, for the farm walk. The following weekend, 26 people came. The weekend after that, 40. They started arriving on weekdays too, asking at the farm stand if Lena might have time to show them around. She was not always able to. She had a farm to run, but she did what she could, and what she couldn't do, the farm did on its own. Because the fields were there, visible, available, speaking their own language to anyone willing to stand quietly and listen. And then a thing happened that I think even Lena did not fully anticipate, though in retrospect, it makes perfect sense. The guests stopped eating at Estuary. Not all of them. Not entirely. But the restaurant at the lodge had been doing strong dinner service from the beginning, good numbers, reliable revenue. And then, over the summer of 2005, the dinner numbers started softening in a way that didn't correspond to occupancy. The lodge was full, the guests were present. They were simply not in the restaurant at 7 p.m. They were at the farm stand, buying armfuls of sweet peas and dahlias and whatever Lena had cut that morning. They were sitting on the log that served as a bench beside stand, talking to other guests they'd met on the farm walk, staying longer than they'd planned. Some of them drove into Courtenay for dinner, to the small Italian place on 5th Street that Lena had told them about. They came back to the lodge late and happy, with flowers in their arms, and they left reviews that mentioned the farm more often than the spa. The lodge's general manager, a composed and professionally unflappable man named Mr. Holt, sent a staff member down to the farm stand in August to observe. The staff member, a young man doing a practicum in hospitality management, came back and filed a report that apparently caused a significant amount of confusion in the management team. He reported that guests were spending an average of 2 to 3 hours at the property, that they were, in his words, just talking to her and looking at the flowers, that many of them appeared more relaxed than they had at any point during their lodge stay, that several had told him, unprompted, that the farm walk was the best part of their trip. The lodge had invested $2.8 million in its wellness programming. Lena had invested $12 in a can of paint. Mr. Holt called her in September. He was polite, more polite than Mr. Caldwell had been, and Lena gave him credit for that. He said he was curious about the nature of her operation and whether there might be a conversation worth having. What kind of conversation? Lena asked. A mutually beneficial one, he said. She said she was open to hearing what he had in mind. Now, I want to be very clear about something. Let me stop here and be direct with you, because this part of the story is easy to misread. Lena did not negotiate from anger. She was not performing strength. She was not running a strategy. She was doing what her parents had done, which was farming honestly and letting the quality of the thing speak. The leverage she had was not leverage she had cultivated. It was simply the leverage of doing something real in a landscape full of things that were trying very hard to seem real. That distinction matters enormously, because it meant that when Mr. Holt sat down across from her at her kitchen table, not in a boardroom, because she had declined the boardroom, she already knew what she would and wouldn't agree to. She would not sell the land. Not a hectare of it. That was not a negotiating position. That was a fact like the temperature outside. She would not allow the lodge to use her name or her farm's name in their marketing without her explicit approval on every individual use. She would not scale the farm walk into something it wasn't. The walk would remain what it was. Lena, the fields, $12. Bring a bucket. It would not become a programmed activity with a lodge coordinator and a script, and a waiting list managed through a booking app. What she would agree to was simple. She would agree to a partnership in which the lodge provided a printed card to every guest upon check-in. The card would describe the farm walk. It would give the address. That was all. No markup, no commission, no exclusivity. The lodge was welcome to direct their guests to her farm. Her farm would continue to be exactly what it was. Mr. Holt reviewed this proposal with what Lena described later as the expression of a man trying to determine if he had misunderstood something. "That's it," he said. "That's it," she said. "You don't want. We could offer a revenue share on the referrals, we could." "I don't want a revenue share," she said. "I want people to come and see the flowers." He accepted the terms. He didn't fully understand them, but he accepted them. The following spring, Lena received a letter from Meridian's corporate office in Vancouver. It was signed by someone named Mr. Caldwell. The same Mr. Caldwell, she assumed, though she couldn't be certain, because she'd only met him once and wasn't entirely sure she'd remember his face. The letter was formal and stiffly written. It said that Meridian Hospitality Group wished to acknowledge the positive impact that Beaupre Flower Farm had had on the guest experience. At Meridian Valley Lodge, it said that the company was interested in exploring a deeper partnership. It floated ideas about a co-branded experience package, about featuring the farm in national advertising for the lodge, about a potential arrangement involving exclusivity. Lena read the letter once. She set it on the kitchen table. She poured herself a cup of coffee. Then she wrote back 2 paragraphs on her farm's notepaper, the simple letterhead her mother had designed years ago with a small hand-drawn peony at the top. She thanked them for their interest. She said the current arrangement, the card at check-in, was working well for both parties, and she intended to continue it as is. She said she was not interested in exclusivity or co-branding. She said the farm would remain what it had always been, and that she trusted they had found that to be sufficient. She sealed the envelope. She walked to the end of the road and put it in the postbox. She went back to the dahlia field and resumed what she had been doing before the mail arrived, which was staking the Bishop of Landau's before the September wind came up. The deal she had turned down was worth. This came out later, through the particular small valley way that these things always come out, somewhere in the range of $120,000 a year. She had turned it down because her father had taught her something she believed, which was that you cannot franchise the thing that makes a thing itself. Now let me tell you what that valley looks like today. Beaupre Flower Farm is still there. Lena is in her early 50s now, and she moves through the fields with the particular economy of someone who has done the same work for a very long time and has stopped wasting motion. The dark red farm stand is still there too, repainted 3 times, always the same color. Her mother Clothilde came back from Quebec in 2011 for what was meant to be a summer visit and never left. She is in her mid-80s now and cannot do the heavy work anymore, but she can still be found in the peony field on the good days in June, in her wooden chair watching the blooms. The U-pick is more popular than it has ever been. On summer weekends, the road to the farm has cars parked along both shoulders for 100 meters. People come from Vancouver now, from Victoria, from as far as Calgary. They have driven 4 hours for a Saturday morning in the dahlia field. When you ask them why, they have trouble explaining it. They say it's just something about being there. The flowers, the quiet, the fact that nothing is trying to sell them anything. It has changed management twice. The restaurant has changed its name. The branding has been updated, but the card they give to guests at check-in, the card about the farm walk, the $12 bring a bucket, that card has never changed. New management, new branding, same card, because they learned, as organizations sometimes do, that certain things are more valuable held constant. Mr. Caldwell left Meridian in 2009. Lena doesn't know what became of him. Mr. Holt stayed in the valley. He opened a small bakery in Courtenay in 2014. After he retired, which Lena found quietly satisfying in a way she has never fully articulated. He stops by the farm stand occasionally. He buys sweet peas. They talk about the weather, about how the valley has changed, about the particular character of a Kamak September. He is good company. She thinks of him without bitterness. There is a young woman working the farm now, part-time through the summer, a 22-year-old from Courtenay who came to do the U-pick 2 years ago and asked at the end if Lena needed help. Her name is not important to the story, except that she showed up without being recruited, which is generally how the right people arrive. Lena has been teaching her the way Raymond taught Lena, not with lectures, but with labor. walking the rows, listening to the irrigation, learning the specific sound of a dahlia stem when it's ready to cut, and the specific sound when it isn't. Lena told her something last fall. Walking the peony beds in November, the same time of year, the same gray sky, the same cold coming off the mountains. People come here and they think what we're selling is flowers, Lena said. The young woman waited. We're not selling flowers. You can buy flowers anywhere. Lena crouched down and pressed her palm flat against the mulched earth, that same gesture, inherited without knowing it. We're selling the fact that someone has cared for this specific ground for a very long time. That's what they're actually coming for. That's what you can't buy at the garden center, and you can't build in a cabin along the river. The young woman looked out over the beds, which were all resting and covered, and quietly doing what fields do in November. How long does it take, she asked, to grow what? To grow the thing people are actually coming for. Lena stood up, brushed the earth from her knees. Long enough, she said. That's the whole point. Long enough that no one else is willing to wait. A development company came for the land and saw a parcel with river frontage and an aging flower stand. They brought projections and blueprints and a man who spoke very confidently about opportunity. They built a resort. They sold the mountains and the mist and the manufactured piece of a place designed to feel like somewhere real. Lena kept the farm. The farm kept being real. And in the end, the resort discovered that real was the only thing their guests actually wanted, the one thing they couldn't build, couldn't brand, couldn't put in a package at $470 a night. The land remembered who cared for it. It always does.